So
Oh,
there's
that's
that.
nice. Say hello back. And just
Yeah.
by the way, is Neil, is it, how do you pronounce your name?
Me?
My last name?
No, Neil, I figure, first name.
Yeah, Neil. That's
No,
right.
but is it Ali or Ali or?
So
Oh,
it's a great question, Oliver. You're hitting me with the hard hitting ones. I don't know the answer, and there's a good reason. It's because my middle name's Alexander, and my parents, who are from Bangladesh, chose to give me an Anglo name, and I ran with it. And then I got to college, and my Anglo friends were like, "Your first name's Ali. Why don't you go for that?" So I kind of gave it away. But then over the years, if you meet folks from apparently Arabic is a pretty popular language across a wide region. And there will be people, perhaps not surprisingly, that will get into heated debates about how to pronounce Arabic words. So I say Ali. I have met a very Egyptian man who would say, Ali, Ali, come here. So I don't want to really give an official answer, but you can kind of roll with the way I say it. But it's a
I mean,
loaded question.
true, that's true.
but thank you for asking. I think that's, kind of the first step is, he could have just been like, I'm calling you whatever I want. But.
That's
So the
good.
answer, Oliver, is he doesn't know. So just do whatever you want. But welcome to the show. Ali, Ali,
Ali?
Ali. This other guy has. Let's introduce our guest because no one knows
Absolutely.
who we're talking to over in the old ear holes. Go ahead.
Totally. And this is very exciting because this is the first time on World's Greatest Dad where we've had a guest where technically neither of us have ever met him, but that's because he's such an intriguing character. Folks, today's guest is Oliver G., an Australian journalist turned Paris podcaster, author, and father. He's a creator and host of the Earful Tower, a wildly popular podcast all about life in Paris, which has racked up millions of downloads and become a go-to for Francophiles around the world. He's also the author of Paris on Air, the co-creator of several charming children's books set in France. That gives me, I'm like, that's really impressive. Oliver's a go-getter, clearly. And most importantly, the reason why he's here today, he is a proud dad raising his kids, Otis and Astrid, in the heart of Paris. Oliver G., welcome to World's Greatest Dad.
What an introduction. I couldn't have done that any better. So thank you for the introduction and the invitation.
Neil
Of
wrote it.
course.
Neil's good. Neil does a lot of the lifting. I'm just hanging out. to be
Well,
Well,
I
honest.
you,
wrote it, but you accomplished it all.
you know,
I
you
didn't. So you had to do all those things and kind of
That
be that person, and then I just had to like put it in a few sentences.
actually
well, I
that's true.
appreciate it.
Oliver, we're just doing a laundry list of your accomplishments. But like seriously, welcome and I'm sure you maybe come to this conclusion because you've been at this for a minute. We just started this year. We're a little wet behind the ears, as we say in America. I've been learning lately there are some phrases that don't always carry over to even other English speaking countries. But I think, like the power of just making connections, and it's wonderful to connect with you. And we're totally stoked because you got a lot of listeners, man. Tell us your secrets. But yeah, welcome.
Thanks so much. I mean, firstly, I can relate to exactly what you said because a lot of Australianisms, sayings that we have in Australia, don't translate to Americanisms. And most of my listeners are in the States. And we're going already down a rabbit hole, but I love this kind of thing. I could give you loads of examples of where I say something that I naturally say. Perfect example because it's related to children. I call a stroller a pushchair. That's just what I naturally call it. And if I said
Whoa.
that on the show, and I do say it on the show, I get letters from people in the States or emails saying, usually they're really nice. In fact, they're always nice, but I love the show. Everything's so great. It made me chuckle how you call it a pushchair. Over here, we call it a stroller. And the problem with that is, next time that word comes into my head, I think if I say pushchair again, people will be thinking about how I'm saying something and not what I'm saying. And a kind of goal of podcasting, journalism, anything, is you want people to be listening to the story, not the weird words, you know? So next time I say that word, I might say stroller, which is kind of weird. It's like influences the way that you talk, even doing a show. But
Yeah.
that's jumping down a rabbit hole. How did I do it? Is just the the a war of attrition. Time. It's just I've been doing
Cool.
this for 8 years or something. So
Yeah.
if there weren't lots of listeners by now, I would have been doing something wrong, I guess. But
Yeah.
It's interesting because you've been podcasting for almost a decade. You've been parenting for, I think your kids are 4 and 1.
yep.
So for 4 years, so you've got more than double the expertise as a podcaster. Ollie and I, he's got a 13-year-old son, Heath. I've got a 7-year-old and almost 5-year-old. He'll be 5 in a few weeks. And so we are way better at parenting than podcasting, and
And
we're
that's
just still even
sad.
figuring it out, because we're like, how do we do this? That's why we bring people on. But we're so excited to have you for a million reasons. But when Ollie said, "Oh, this guy Oliver G is awesome, and Brewerly knows him, and he's got kids, and he's in Paris, and we can kind of take that angle," he's like, "Yeah, we'll get him on eventually." And I was like, "Ollie, I'm going to Paris in like 2 weeks. Let's get him on now, because I don't want this thing where we chat in like October, and you're like, you should have done this, you should have done this, you
Yeah.
should have done this."
Oh
So
yeah.
we are. I have a friend from childhood who is getting married in Mallorca, not Paris, but we're flying into Paris because my daughter's in a dual language program here in Brooklyn, New York, and we were like, oh, why don't we go to Paris for a few days? You can flex your old French chops, see how good you can actually get around. So we're just gonna put her in the subway and let her kind of no. So we're gonna be there for I think about 4 days before we head to Spain, and we've got this whole itinerary mapped up, that my wife did, and I don't know if it's right. I've been listening to your podcast, and I'm like, we're not hitting all the 5 landmarks. We're not hitting these museums. I know there's like the best park, the best croissant. I mean, but then part of me is like, can we really go wrong? We've got kids in Paris. We walk around and it's magical, right?
That's well, you know what we can do over this podcast is I can teach you about Paris and podcasting. You guys can teach me about parenting. We'll all come out the wiser at the end.
Oh
As for
my
your
God.
4 day trip, I would is it your wife that's doing, did you say she's planning everything down to
She
the
walked me through a day by day itinerary of, we have a reservation at this restaurant, but also we could go to this one and we can route that. And I'm just like, it's one
Okay.
of those things where I'm grateful for it. I can't really have any opinions because if I do, she'll say, well, then you should have planned it,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. This is the one thing I'll add to your itinerary without even a moment of hesitation. Is if you divide those 4 days up into, let's say, 8 half days or whatever, 8 segments, take 1/8 of your wife's plans and rip them up and leave it totally empty so that you can wander and explore without agenda, because that makes such a difference in the city. It's a city that's built for walking, maybe walking with a pushchair, perhaps, but callback already. No, but it's a city where sometimes you can. It happens to me after 10 years in Paris. You discover something you had no idea was there or had no idea was up your alley, and more often than not, that's the story that you come back and share with your friends in Brooklyn. Like people, if you just, I never met your wife. I'm sure she did a great itinerary, but if you just go to all the restaurants and all the famous places and even the semi-famous places and come back, then you have the same story as everybody else. And then they'll be like, "Oh, what do you think of the Earful Tower?"
Oh.
When you say, "Oh, well, one day I took the wrong turn. I ended up in this antique cane shop, like a walking stick shop where blah blah blah," and then you have the best stories, which is how, incidentally, I found most of the stories that I tell on my show is just by not seeking them out, but letting them sort of come to me, and that makes it's such a difference on a trip to Paris as well.
So I will add to this. We were just in Korea and Japan. It was our second time in Japan in the last 3 years, and we were very excited to go. It had been on my bucket list for many, many years, like 20 plus years. My son loves anime. We were very pumped up and excited, and I think that's kind of true with certain cities around the world when you've never gone before, right? The first time we were I had so much anxiety about, I'm going to fly all this way and I'm going to go to all these bad places. And at the time, we had friends who were from the States who were living in Tokyo, and they're like, here's the thing, you can't do it all. Don't stress it. It's all going to be good. And I actually would tell you the most memorable food thing, because food's kind of my original space from Japan, was finding this random yakitori place near where we were staying, kind of using Yelp. Like, it was nothing, there was no list or whatever, and then kind of adding to what you just said about going to the big, highly touted, rated places. Sadly, social media slash internet has made the world very, it's like a Xerox, man. You know, we see the same things over and over again, and they're probably good, and, you know, but then there is something to be said about a little accidental magic. Like, man, when we were just doing a pod about a guy who was like, you know, how much time people spend looking at their phone when they're walking around cities like San Francisco and New York City, and it's criminal. It's wrong. These were cities that were created and wonderful without needing a phone. Save that for the boring places like Iowa.
I mean, on top of that, I was in Rome recently with the kids, and incidentally, Italy is a whole fascinating topic when it comes to kids, and how well they're welcomed. But we did a similar thing. We were looking up places to go, and we'd be like, "Oh, this Instagram or blogger recommends this bar." And then at a certain point, we went to one that was really average. And I said to my wife, I was like, "Which blogger recommended this? Who?" And then she was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Well, why do we care what they said anyway?" You know? So
Yeah.
like, and then we did the same. My own advice, we took it, and we just discovered our own stuff. And same with Paris. When I talk about Paris on my show, if you listen to it enough or you read enough of my stuff, it's very much, it's not about the hottest, newest places necessarily, but it's more of a human connection, or an interesting place. Like there's things like, I'm obsessed with a 800-year-old wall that ran through Paris, and a lot of my listeners will know that about me, and send me pictures of old walls they find when they walk around Paris and say, "Is this it? Is this it?" And for me, that's way more interesting than and I've got a full respect for food writers and everything like that, because I know what goes into it. But that's not really my arena, and I sort of, I've got to keep my finger on the pulse of the city. But I think there's a million and one stories here to uncover, that a million and one stories that haven't even been covered yet. So I seek those things out, and maybe going back to what you said, maybe that's why the show has managed to survive and thrive.
What made you start? What made you start it?
Well, I was working as a journalist. So I came here 10 years ago as like a proper journalist, covering the country's news in English. At a time, it was 2015, so there was the terror attacks. I'm sure you guys and your listeners will, or your listener, is that what you say? Your listener?
His wife.
Where
No, my wife too. We have two.
You've
Shoot, that's two.
listened. He's listened to the show.
there
Yeah.
you go. So
Yeah.
I came here to be a journalist, and there was the terror attacks that I'm sure you remember, of Charlie Hebdo and the Bataclan and stuff like that. And it was very, very serious. And um, at the end of the days, weeks, months, years, I was like, what am I doing this for? I don't burn for this like other journalists burn for it, and I think they're the ones that should be doing it. So someone invited me to start a channel, like a community radio show on the side, where I talked about anything but news. I just interviewed people. And then, so this is 8 years ago. And then the guy that ran the station said, "Have you ever thought of making this into a podcast?" Because he told me that their stats would spike when I had a show out. And I was like, I said to him, "I don't even know what a podcast is, and I don't think I could do it." And he's like, "You could do it, just try." And then I started it. And then I think for two fellow podcasters, this will be inspiring. I don't know for other people, but I I just I knew people really liked it, even though there were very few of them. And I just looked up what the minimum wage was in France at the time, and I started a Patreon account. And I was like, I just want the income to equal minimum wage. If I can get to that, it's a job. And way before it reached that, I quit my job and just focused all in on it. And then I got to that level, which to me was like officially a podcaster. And then I
Mm.
just kept working with that sort of energy. And now, like you said in the intro, now it's in 8 years of podcasting, that's very established. That's like 100 human years or something like that, you
For
know?
sure, especially the last 8 years, which I mean, Neil and I both worked in cable TV, so we can tell you a lot about media upheaval. I
There you
really
go,
pushed
right.
the age
Well, I
of it.
mean, yeah, it was fortunate timing. And now I think if people are coming to Paris and they Google, because people consume info more from podcasts now. So a lot of people will just type in podcast Paris, something like that, and then they'll find the show. And then there's 400, 500 episodes now, so there's something for everybody. And if
Mm,
you like food, for example, there'll be an interview with a chef, or if you like um, language or old walls or whatever, there's going to be something for you. And then hopefully from my side, you get addicted to it and you
yeah.
can't get enough of it and you're rusted on for life. There's my
I'm
whole business strategy.
I'm like into this wall now. I mean, I've never been to Paris, and I actually just ate at a kind of a take on a French bistro, and I had this dish that was like some old school Paul Bocuse, like bring on the gout cooking. And that's like the stuff that I gravitated towards as I was a portly child. I still am inside. So I'm gonna be very giddy when I get to Paris, and it'll be like Tokyo. I'll be like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna go to the wrong place. I'm gonna just go to the wall, meditate, and then just eat the first thing I see.
I think you would know exactly where to go for food. I think for a foodie, it makes sense to plan because you got to do restaurant reservations and stuff. But if you've seen like a lot of foodies when they come to a foodie capital like Paris or Lyon or whatever, they often have their greatest stories from the little diner or whatever bistro that
That's
makes the
kind of my,
perfect.
to be
There you go.
honest, yeah. It's like when you go to like a really good city, and then I mean, yeah, like I don't. I usually tell when I was in Kyoto, and they're famous for like basically their tasting menu, seasonally driven tasting menu. It's this thing that's been going on for frickin' centuries. It's insane. And you talk to the locals. I'm using the old Google Translate, and I'm like, kaiseki, kaiseki. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. We went for my aunt's birthday. Like, they don't be doing that all the time. They're like, it's expensive.
Yeah,
Like, I'm going to just go here, eat here, normal. Because I'm a
yeah.
normal person living in a great food place. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's hard. Because I think one thing for sure is like realizing that certain food trends become very popular, and then you can't escape them. And like right
Well, look,
now,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, there's a chef, or no, he's a food critic that I interviewed. Alec Lobrano is his name, and he I think he said it on my show or in a book or something. He said when he came to Paris as a 17-year-old, he just bought a baguette. He was broke. He bought a baguette and some cheese or ham or something. Sat by the Seine, and he said that baguette changed his life. And I get that. I love bread and patisserie, like croissants. I
yeah.
love croissants. It's maybe a large percentage of the reason that I'm still in Paris is they just make the best croissants. So and she, oh my God, I'm not even get started. But yeah, in summary, it's not all about the big famous restaurants either, because they've got they know what they're doing with food here.
Yeah. Well, and cities change, right? I mean, it's interesting because like I'm in New York, Ollie's in Austin, Texas, used to be in LA. Um, and it's funny because I've been here, probably 15 years or so. I'm from New Jersey. I don't know if you've heard of a state called New Jersey.
Of
It's
course,
right next
yeah, Bruce
to
Springsteen.
Manchester. Yeah. And but huh? How about that, huh? Uh, yeah, Jersey pride. But no, so I live in Brooklyn, which is a borough in the largest city in the United States, New York. And the funny thing about being here, they say, I don't know if it's like this in Paris, you got to live here 10 years to be a New Yorker, right? Like that's the arbitrary bar that someone created and is kind of stuck. And so I guess, a New Yorker now, but it's funny because you start to take kind of this weird ownership over, oh, that place is gone, or oh, I used to go there. You find people, especially who've been in the neighborhood a long time or been in the area, they're like, oh, well, I used to go there when it was like this, or the city's dead. But the reality is, the city is a living, breathing thing. Um, and sometimes the places come and go, buildings go up, buildings come down, the people move, but there's a vibe to it and values and a history. And I'm curious, like, what what has changed in the past 10 years and what really hasn't and you think won't be changing, like the Paris that you've experienced before kids, if your kids continue to stay there into adulthood, what do you think will just always be Paris?
Super interesting topic. Um, and incidentally, I was in New York a couple months ago, and I was thinking about the same thing because I was watching, or I was down, I guess it's Greenwich Village, sort of Bob Dylan territory. And I was thinking about what it was like when he was kicking around. Obviously, that film came out fairly recently, so it put it to the forefront of my mind at least. And I was wondering, like, if Bob Dylan was the Bob Dylan of today, 20-year-old just moved to New York, if he would be hanging around there and if he'd like it. I quite liked it down there, but I knew as well that it wouldn't have been like it was in the 60s. And similarly for Paris, like, if you read about, let's say, Ernest Hemingway's take on Paris from 100 years ago, talking about the Latin Quarter. You read those books and it talks about how cheap it was. They're living in hotels. There's chickens running around on the street and this kind of thing. It's nothing at all like that anymore. I don't even know where the Hemingways of today would be staying, but it's certainly not over there. So that's in the fifth, sixth arrondissement, which is very chic right now. Still studenty, but you're not there on a pittance. It just doesn't happen. And then even funny that we're talking about this today because today I happen to be in the neighborhood where I first lived, very central. I had a tiny little, in French it's called a chambre de bonne. It's like a maid's quarters at the top floor in the second arrondissement, so the bullseye of Paris, if Paris was a dartboard. And I happened to be walking past and I said to my wife, I said, I can't believe that we lived here 10 years ago and that 10 years have passed and now I'm walking here with you with our 4-year-old and 1-year-old. And we said to the 4-year-old, I was like, you want to see where Mummy and Daddy used to live? And he's like, yeah, let's go. And we go and the door opens, the street door opens to the courtyard. And there's a man there. And I say, hey, do you mind if we just pop in and have a look? We used to live here 10 years ago. And so we popped in and got chatting to this guy just in the courtyard. And we're talking to him about this very thing, how much that neighborhood, Central Paris, which is crazy to think Central Paris has changed. I don't know what the equivalent would be in other cities like Austin or New York or whatever, but Central Paris, when I moved there, and for people who know the city well, I'm talking about just off Rue Montorgueil and Rue Saint-Denis. And Rue Saint-Denis was full of like sex shops, and you'd walk down that street and there'd be women of the night would be beckoning you in. There's a Paul Simon lyric about something like this. Whatever. I do declare there were times when I was so lonesome I took some comfort there. I didn't, but I'm just thinking of his lyric. And now when we went back today, there's hardly any of these shops anymore. And so just that area has changed. So I think there are bits that are always going to be timeless, like walking along the curve of the Seine towards the Eiffel Tower from Concorde, very specific, but people will know what I'm talking about, I think. That'll be the same if you go there today, 100 years ago, almost if you were a Roman there 2,000 years ago. The curve of the Seine hasn't really changed. And then neighborhoods like where I live, the 12th arrondissement, and for your listeners this isn't a Paris show, so maybe I'm getting too deep here, but there's 20 districts, like a snail, one snailing, circling all the way out to 20. And now I'm in the 12th, which is changing before my eyes. Fancy restaurants and cafes are opening, like this gentrification is happening beneath my feet. So on one hand, it feels like it's changing every day, and on the other hand, it's absolutely timeless, especially like if you compare it to other like I said, there's an 800-year-old wall where you can find big chunks of it, and they don't knock it down when they find more bits of it. There's restaurants with towers in the middle of it. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder with 800-year-old stones. So there's a timeless aspect, and there's also this exciting change that's happening as well. So it's sort of it goes always really. The city will never change, and the city's changing every day. Maybe that's a difficult answer to swallow, but that's how it feels.
I think that's perfect. Yeah.
It's funny because like when you're talking about what a neighborhood equivalent is like in Austin, New York, like I think, to be blunt, they're in a lot of places, usually in cities that are essentially growing, and they're on the upswing. I think it's kind of sad but true. Like, it's hard to find a place that just goes steady Eddie. You know what I mean? Things are going up or things are going down. Down has its obvious downsides. But if you're looking for a low cost of living, you have that. And then when things are going on the upside, you're like, I can't walk out of my house and not spend $10 on like a latte. Maybe it's crazy. But
it's weird. That's weird to think that if you're like your kids, like if my kids in 40 years come back to retrace my steps, I can imagine them being like, you lived here, this is the dodgy part of town,
Yeah.
or how did you live here? This is the fanciest part of town, and it's completely changed from whatever it was. I met an old lady in the streets of the Marais, the other day, and she was walking out of her door, and I said, "Oh, we just got chatting." I said, "Lucky you." She said she'd lived here her whole life. I said, "Lucky you, growing up in the Marais." And she said, "Are you joking? We were ashamed to live here in the 19 whatever
Yeah.
50s or whatever." So, yeah,
It's the same old story here in New York City. You know, you see people in like the bougie neighborhoods, you know, Williamsburg area of Brooklyn, and you own? Like, yeah, we bought this place for $30,000 when, you know, we were worried about walking outside and getting stabbed. And now it's worth a few million bucks. So if you can weather the storm of potentially being stabbed in the street when it's a, you know, high crime area. But I do think that that's the story of cities often too, probably around the world, is the artists move in where they can afford. They make beautiful art. They increase the quality of life of the area, and then people go, "Hey, this place is actually not so bad," and they start building, you know,
Yep.
building up and counting the beans, and then those artists can't afford it anymore, and they kind of move out. In my case, it's I guess it was Williamsburg to Greenpoint to Bushwick to, you know, Bed-Stuy, and kind of people the artists and, you know, artist class, I guess, just kind of just keeps getting pushed, you know, and then all the things that kind of made it charming, it becomes kind of cookie cutter, and that's a shame. But I also wonder if that's just part of how cities
I mean,
develop.
the positive side of that is that the artists will find another place to artify, and that will be lovely too. And maybe there's change can be good too. I don't know. I don't know. I'll tell you though. I'll tell you a funny thing. My wife is Swedish, so I go to Sweden a lot. And I used to live in Stockholm, and there's a place there, Södermalm. It's called. It's an island that's kind of the cool place. And far on one side of the island, they used to call it Kniv Söder, which translates to like knife Södermalm, like what you said, this place that you'd get stabbed. And then as it gentrified, they call it Kniv och Gaffel Söder, which means like knife and fork Södermalm, because now it's where you go to get a good meal. Whereas once you'd be stabbed, now you go to get the meal. So it's that's how it is.
It's kind of funny. Like part of it is, you're like you're happy that a neighborhood's like better. You're like, oh, I didn't get stabbed after I ate my steak fried. But there is something about like how when you reminisce, there's something a little melancholy, a little sad about going, oh, that time that I had is gone. Like, and I
Mm.
think part of it is when we lament about change, we actually lament about the passage of time and how
Mm.
we won't be around forever, which is getting deep, but we're also just silly dads. And you brought up something very interesting, Oliver. Your wife's Swedish, you're an Aussie, and I'm using all my restraint not to go into a Paul Hogan Crocodile Dundee accent bit. We all know that hasn't been played out enough. But how do you adjust to the norms of being in a third culture, France, parenting in Paris, when you're also, maybe you have Australian parenting tendencies and apparently Swedish parenting tendencies? And by the way, I have no idea what all three of those really mean, but it's a heady stew, if you will, of parenting norms.
It's a pretty it's I mean, like, on top of that, my mother is British, so I think I was brought up British Australian. So I feel like I'm a little used to the idea. I've thought about this a lot, actually. The idea of my mum's mum would send us British comic books, which we read like religiously. And I realized at some point that none of my friends in Australia had any idea about these characters. So imagine it may as well be a different language. Imagine you're reading about some superhero and none of your friends know what you're talking about. You can't share it. It's just your thing at home. Um, and all we watched were British comedies, for example, on TV. So I had a very, very firm British sense of growing up as well. So I already got that idea of two different things to a degree. Um, and then, yeah, my wife is very Swedish, but when we met, we ended up in Paris really quick, and so we already had that three country thing going. And so to start from there, that's a really nice way of starting a relationship as being in a third country because if you, I think most people who come to Paris come with a French husband or boyfriend or wife or girlfriend, whatever, and that is the sort of I don't know what the word is, yardstick, maybe the person that's going to help you with everything. Oh no, don't buy that yogurt. Don't go to that supermarket. That street is where you're going to get stabbed. Whereas we together had no idea about anything. Nothing at all. Like, even like, how do you pay taxes? These things we had to figure out ourselves or ask for help from people. And so it made it for a really nice introduction to this city. We really liked the way that it happened, sort of organically. Similarly, bringing up children, we sort of had to mold to what they do here and be I don't know, receptive to our own ways of doing it as well. Like there's not I think it's probably the same for anyone. I don't think people go, okay, what are they doing next door? That's what we'll do. It's a mix of everything. Um but there are things that you can't really prepare for, like my son is 4 now, but he was very recently 3, and I caught myself. They bring home a so he's in a French-speaking school. Everything is French. There's no the teachers don't even speak English, so they give him a book every week to read over the weekend, I guess. And I was reading the French book to him, and there was a word in the title of the book that I didn't know. And I speak pretty decent French. The word was checkered. It was a book about a checkered elephant, maybe, I think it was. That's a pretty advanced word for any language, checkered, like, you know what I mean? And I was like, God, I don't know that. I never had seen that word. The context, I could figure it out, but I'm struggling with my 3-year-old's homework. That's pretty weird. That's something that you can't prepare for. And I can only assume it gets harder when he's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Um, Gosh, doing algebra in French or whatever, you know, that's, I'm starting to sweat just think about it. But so there's these things. There's you got to be very much conscious of how everybody else is doing it because well, there's this famous book by an American woman called French Children Don't Throw Food. Pamela Druckerman wrote it. It's also called Bringing Up Baby in different countries. So if you heard of it, it could be either of those. You know
I
what?
read it. I read it as bringing up Bebe,
Yeah.
and I don't know how many of those tenants were still applying, but it was a yeah. But when my wife was pregnant with our now 7-year-old daughter, she was like, "Read this thing. This is and we made like the yogurt cake or whatever. I don't know if I've made it since, but I was like, yeah, we're gonna parent like French people because they figured it out. We're not
Yeah.
gonna be crazy Americans, and then life happens.
Life happens. But so that book was fascinating. I read it just as a sort of what's the word? Anthropological? You know what I mean? I read it just out of curiosity before kids were even on the horizon. I found it really fascinating because I lived here. And then I read it again when we had kids. She's been on my show before. I met her a couple times. Um, that that's similar. Like you're very aware of what's happening around you. French kids don't throw food. They're very well behaved. This restaurant, French kids, is a whole topic that's fascinating. Um, and I don't know what it's like in the States. I don't even remember what it's like in Australia. I've been out of Australia for 15 years or something now. But it'd be crazy if you brought your kids up in a way that they would misbehave in a restaurant at the age of 2 or 3, because then you go to the restaurant in Paris and you're going to be in trouble. Like, that's not cool. So, same with school and stuff. You got to fit into the system to a certain degree, but then also you don't want to lose the Australian way of life, let's say, or the Swedish way of life. So it's a pretty tricky thing, and you got to there's a you got to leave room for everything a little bit. And it's curious, and there's no blueprint for it. There's no blueprint, even for like language learning. We do the way that we talk at home. We didn't read about this, but it's called the OPOL, one parent, one language system. I didn't know that was a thing until way after. But I only speak English with the kids, and my wife only speaks Swedish, and then the world they only get French. So I tell you what, you should check out the episode I did with my 3-year-old talking about this.
I
Uh,
heard it. I listened. He yeah. Well, now 4, right? You said?
exactly, yeah. It was
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
fascinating.
it was adorable. And yeah, no, it was really interesting to hear you guys talk about. He doesn't seem, but because this is his normal, he doesn't seem phased at all by it.
No, but I was thinking I didn't learn, I don't think I knew that there were other languages in the world until I was like 8. I don't think I was even, maybe someone had turned on a TV channel that was in Spanish or something, and maybe it occurred to me. But this kid knows 3 languages. He said the other day, because we'd just been in Italy, someone came up to him and said, "Oh, how many languages do you speak?" He said 4. And I was like, 4? And he goes, "Yeah, Italian as well. We were just like, we were in Italy." I was like, "Well, you don't speak Italian at all." But just having that knowledge that there are other languages, and it sounds maybe like I'm bragging about him, but it's not that. It's more just this fascination I have with seeing how this young, malleable brain can understand what seems like a pretty difficult concept of languages. It fascinates me to no end, and I was really glad to capture it in podcast form to be able to listen to in 10 years' time or whatever. And the feedback on that was, if you guys want to grow your podcast, get kids on talking different languages because it apparently makes a big difference.
Or we can just have kids who speak in different languages, and that'll be its own kind of type of entertainment. You brought up something interesting. Kids in restaurants behaving, and this might be a huge cultural divide or just a personal failure on my part. But in a restaurant in Paris, there's children there. I'm a spitball in age, 6, 7. Would you see that kid at the restaurant like zoned out in an iPad?
No, I think maybe if they were from another country, like, and I'm not judging. I get it. I love the screen and everything, but we've got the kids are. It struck me because I met a guy from Australia whose kid must have been maybe 8 or 9 or something, and he brought the kid to the bar that I met him in Paris. I'm pretty sure it wasn't even a friend. It was like a +1. I was there as a +1, and the kid just sat on the iPad for like 2 hours, and it struck me as being different because I hadn't seen it before like that. And once I want to make it super clear, no judgment in any direction here, but I don't think I'd seen it in Paris until that. So I got friends here. I've done it myself, but I got friends here who are super foodies. They go out once a week to a nice restaurant, and they've been bringing their kids since she was. Because I was talking about babysitting with them, and they said, and this kid is 4, and they said they'd never had a babysitter before. I was like, but you guys go out to restaurants. We've brought the kid since she was 0 to restaurants. So her whole life has been going to restaurants and behaving and eating. They eat. And they don't just make kids food for them. Sometimes these kids will eat like regular food. And I'm saying this, I don't know what it's like in Austin or New York, but or anywhere else really. But they treat you almost like an adult from a very young age here. And just to touch on the Italy thing for a second, just because it's right on topic. In Italy, it's so different because especially Rome, they love children like I've never seen before. And even if they're exaggerating or faking it for tips or whatever, no one can fake it that well. I've never seen anything like it, especially after Paris, where it's sort of like children seem to be seen and not heard a little bit here, well behaved in the restaurant, let's say. In Rome, it's like, oh, you got a little, bambino. Oh, bring him in. Let's do this. Let's do that. So make a chair. What do they want? And I was like, I've never seen anything like that. So it's different in neighboring countries even, but in Paris, in general, I'd say kids are pretty well behaved, and read that book, Bringing Up Bebe, for a very deep insight into it. I don't know how it's happened, but it certainly seems to be the case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is expectations, right? Because I mean, at least in America, you'll hear like, "Oh, that place is kid friendly." What it really means is they don't care if your kids scream and run around the whole place, and it's not going to disturb our other patrons.
Mm.
Like it's not as if they suddenly, snap into, being well behaved or kind of sitting quietly, or it's just, oh, it's kid friendly. You're not going to piss anyone off, which is it's just a cultural expectation that like there are adult spaces and there are family spaces or kid, or exclusively kid spaces that are really for the kids and the adults just kind of tolerate it. But yeah, it seems like in France, and other countries, often the case is that like, this is a space for people.
I mean, I want to be super clear that I don't think my kid is an angel or all French children are angels, but They do have when you say kid friendly, I think there's a place in the 12th arrondissement called Ground Control, which used to be a I think it was a train station or a place like a like a hangar for planes, like a train depot, that's what it'd be called. And it's just this huge space. And if people want to have a sort of kid-friendly idea where kids can run around, they do go to that. I went there recently with some friends and the kids were running around just as mischievous as kids from any other country. Like there was one point I looked over and our 4-year-old was laying on the floor face down with another 4-year-old and we're like, oh my God, like this they're as atrocious as anybody else. I want to make that super clear because I don't think necessarily the French have absolutely figured it out, and I certainly haven't absolutely figured it out.
Yeah.
But in comparison, when it does come to a decent restaurant, I think French kids are typically very well behaved, and we notice it even when we
Scoop.
travel and we have doesn't say again.
No, I was gonna say, Ollie, did you hear that hot scoop that French kids are no angels?
Write it down. Next book.
I honestly, it did make me go, okay, at least there is some sort of playscape, like, literally, and for our two listeners, one of them is the one I'm talking about. We know Oliver through my wife Burley, who took a trip to Paris. So you've met her, and she's someone who is, you know, maybe defies some cliches of someone who's visiting from Texas who might eat at buffets, or do other kind of listen to country music. She's a bit worldly and likes nice things, but I can tell you when she visited Austin a little over 10 years ago, she was calling me going, "You're not going to believe this place, it's magical. The supermarket has a playground. This restaurant has a playground. And the parents can drink beer at the playground." Like, it was basically like, we're moving here because it's a complete concession to adjust to life with a 3-year-old, and no one bats an eye. And that was kind of a huge thing, even in LA, where it would be like, "Oh, you have a kid?" Side eye. And then here it's just like, whatever. Do you like craft beer? And I'm like, I do, and I have a kid. I'm gonna move here. And for the first couple of years, it was like really rad. But now we're firmly in the wow, he's been on the iPad for how long? Like, and even in Japan, we made concessions to be like, I can't suddenly change where the ship has been heading this whole time. But it's very fascinating to hear the stuff about the restaurants, because that's actually how I grew up. Like, I grew up going to very nice restaurants. I'd wear a coat and tie so I could eat my foie gras, and I just thought that was a generational thing. But apparently, in Paris, they act just like I did in the 80s, and that makes me feel good inside, I guess.
That's nice. I mean, also they're different. I mean, when the 4-year-old was born, we lived in the 7th district, which is where the Eiffel Tower is, very touristy but very wealthy neighborhood. We weren't wealthy at all, but we had a great deal there. And the difference between that and where I live today in terms of being child friendly, even just practical things like we live on an area really near a nice park with big wide avenue like sidewalks and stuff. Um, Even within this city, Paris is 500 different neighborhoods, really. And if we had like just lived in Paris for 2 years, where we lived before in the Eiffel Tower, I would have said Paris is terrible for children. And now where we live, I'm like, we're in kid heaven, sort of. So it also everything depends on. You could do a million different headlines based on the street that you live in, not just. It doesn't all boil down to one district or city or country or anything.
Sure.
Oh, I've been using the mute thing and I got into trouble. So where would you say for our, listeners or whatever, like, are places where, kids can, what are the kind of like family friendly places that maybe allow for a bit rambunctious times, if you will, because obviously there's a lot of people who are visiting Paris.
Yeah, I mean, rambunctious, great word. I think someone messaged me this question, like, we're coming with kids, where should we be based? And I just said to them, it's fraught with danger recommending anything ever. Restaurant, anything. In my position, you recommend anything and then someone does it and they don't like it. They're like, I don't rate anything that you say anymore because this was whatever, especially food. But I just responded to them. I was like, base yourself in the 12th. The 12th district is perfect for kids. And I hesitate to ever say that kind of thing, but it really is just perfect. It's near the Marais, which is a cool part of town for everybody. It's big and spacious. It's changing in such a nice way, and it's cheaper. So that's nice and easy. But in terms of like where to eat and stuff, if you're bringing two kids to Paris, I would favor it's a small city. It's old and small, and lots of restaurants are small. And if your kids are going to be rambunctious, you do not want to be sitting shoulder to shoulder with anyone ever. So I'd favor like the outdoory kind of areas. There's lots of nice little sort of outdoorsy restaurants, like along the Seine, along the river side, for example, where the kids can run around. That ground control place I said, if you got kids that like running around, note that down immediately because that's awesome. They got like it's like food stalls there, sort of. Um, and then I'd also say favor the terraces. Sit outside so the kids can play around outside. But there's never I don't know of any golden list going around that's perfect for where to, and I haven't written it either. I'm also very conscious on my own show. If I write, I've tried before. If I do an episode, the best things to do with kids in Paris, there are a lot of people who will immediately go not listening to that episode because they don't have kids or they're not going to travel with kids or whatever. So I kind of steer clear of that stuff a little bit. When you go too niche with recommending things, you scare people away. So all my episodes are meant to be broadly accessible to everyone. But yeah, I think those tips I gave will be a good start. And then once again, like I said about that food critic, go and have a picnic in a park. You get the best croissants, takeaway croissant, takeaway baguette, some cheese from the fromagerie, and you're just going to be laughing. Crepes. Get some Nutella crepes and sit in the Luxembourg Gardens. And you got room to run around, rambunctious or otherwise.
Hey, Oliver, I want to know because as we established at the top, you've been podcasting a long time, parenting not as long, but you're in it. You're in the thick of it. You're learning, you're growing, you're an expert in some things, although as we've talked about on our show, just when you master the thing, then it changes again and you're like, ah. But I'm curious, like, what lessons have you learned from your podcasting journalism career that you can carry over into parenting, and then vice versa? Like, have your kids made you a better podcaster, a different one? How do they kind of feed each other?
Interesting question. These are great questions. I think, well, when I did that episode with the 3-year-old, that was a really cool way of putting the two together. And it was interesting for me because when you try and talk to a kid that age about a serious thing, you talk to a 3-year-old about a serious thing, what languages do you speak? Especially with ours, he doesn't care, or he'll be silly, or he'll be like, he won't take it seriously. And I had this suspicion that if I took him into the studio and put headphones on and sat in front of a microphone, that I'd get his best side. And it was totally true. It was fascinating to walk into my place of work where I'm sitting now and open the door, and he was like, wow, look at this place. And I was like, you want to wear some headphones? And he's like, yeah. And I put a little like a minute, like a promo of it on social media, which you guys can check. You can even use the audio if you want, where he was like just sitting there with his microphone in front of him, taking it super seriously. And I was like, so how many languages do you speak? What are we going to talk about today? And he was just being interviewed, which was astonishing, really. So I guess I've learned that there are ways of combining the two. In terms of I don't know, I really don't know what parenting improvements I've got from podcasting or vice versa. That's something I have to sit down and really ponder over. But I guess patience is patience is a huge part of both, you know. Realizing that you can't, like, look, I was late to show up to talk to you guys today. I probably tested your patience a little bit there. That's very much something we deal with kids. But I don't know. I think both. There are some similarities in both, in that you're dealing with unpredictable. You're sort of spending time with an unpredictable person. Like, you guys hadn't met me before. You didn't know what I was really going to be like when we sat down. You didn't know if it was going to be good or bad or annoying or what you were hoping for or whatever. Which is really similar to parenting, isn't it? When you, especially as you say, you feel you learn something and then it's changed. You take your kid into the office or you take your kid to a restaurant, you don't really know what you're going to get. So yeah, the patience maybe is a big part. But I don't know, let me think about it and I'll send you a long answer in 6 weeks' time that you'll never need to even read.
We'll do a follow-up. We'll do a postscript.
There you go.
And, it's funny, like your daughter's one, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of years ahead, certainly the next couple to really see that person grow and see their personality develop. But you probably got starting to see what the road will be like for your 4-year-old. I mean, again, if I think back to my son at 4, it makes sense now, but I could not exactly predict the anime thing. That was a whole other level. But thinking about your kid, you've had him on your podcast, your son. I mean, how do you want your son to remember you?
Oof, that's a tough one. How do I want my son to remember me? Um, I guess, I guess that's a super tough question. What do you mean when he's on his
But
death?
there's something that we ask people a lot is, lest you get super morbid. We don't necessarily mean when you're dead. Although, you can answer that one. Sometimes we will ask other dads, when your kids are older and they're describing their dad, like what he was like when they were kids. What would you like your kids to, think back and say, my dad was really like this when we were kids.
I think I'd like him to say that I'm really uh like present and involved. That's what I think. I think that's especially as you say with like the screens and stuff. It's such a easy like shortcut to be like I'm doing like I mean recently this 4-year-old has been waking up at outrageous hours. I mean like 4:30 in the morning. And one of like for like 6 weeks in a row. It's crazy. And we tried loads of different things to fix it. And then it just sort of changed naturally. But on one of those mornings, I woke up and I was like, watch TV, and I was trying to sleep myself. And then the next time he woke up and he goes TV straight away, and I was like, wow, they straight away they get trained like that. And I realize how easy it is to essentially let yourself be distracted. And it doesn't mean necessarily screens. I bet that our own parents and their parents would do the same thing with anything, or they'd read a newspaper or something while the kid did whatever. So I'd like to try to be present and involved in everything. I'd like him to be able to go, like, you remember my friend when I was 7, and I go, yeah, Jenny. I want to be able to answer those questions. Have you seen that sort of trend that's on social media at the moment where kids have a list of, like 15-year-old kids have a list of questions that they ask both their parents? Do you guys already know what I'm talking about? No? They sit in front. So imagine I'm sitting here as a 15-year-old kid or whatever, and my mom is to one side and my dad's to the other. And they ask a series of questions. What's my favorite color? What's my chemistry teacher's name? Whatever. And traditionally, it's the mom that knows all those answers. But what happens that makes this trend quite watchable is the kid will have shown their dad all the answers before, right? So they sit there and they go, "What's my chemistry teacher's name?" And the dad, like a 6-year-old, goes, "Oh, Mr. Smith." And then the mum usually goes, "How do you remember that?" "I don't know." "What's my favorite color?" "Purple." "How do you remember that?" And I think it's kind of funny that we have these natural ideas that dads don't know what's going on in their kid's life, and that's all right. But I think it would be nice if I can manage to be part of these kids' lives in a way that they know that I would know answers to those questions and know what's going on, basically. So that's a kind of unusual answer, I feel, as I say it, but I think that would be a really nice way to be remembered.
I mean, it's so funny. It's like I can only imagine what it would have been like to be like, hey, let me do a podcast when my son was 1, because you're like, it's like we hear so much, it's like I'm just figuring out the whole diaper thing. But thinking for both your kids, what are values that you and your wife want to pass down to your kids? What's like kind of like the core, the G family motto, what's on the family crest?
We don't have that. We don't have the motto yet, but it's good to start thinking about it. But this and the last question ties into something I didn't mention. Is in Sweden you get astronomical levels of parental leave. You can look it up because I don't know off the top of my head, but I confidently can say between the parents you get 16 to 18 months of almost full paid parental leave, meaning I think it's 80%. And there's a bonus if you divide it equally. And I love that. I think it's great. And in the States, I know it's way lower. And in France, I know it's way lower. But I really like that idea. And uh, fortunately, due to this unusual job that I have of being a podcaster of a show that people listen to, and so it's a company, that means I can choose my working hours. And I certainly haven't taken 18 months off, but I've been very present for the first 4 years of that boy's life for sure. Like I'd taken him to school, I've been to the teacher meetings, I've been there on, you know, I pick him up after school sometimes by myself and do, and same with the baby girl. I've been extraordinarily present, um, to a that would rival any father ever. Um, and I've chosen to do it that way, and I really like doing it that way. Um, and I think that's been really important for me to be really part of it. And that sort of answers both questions. But in terms of the like a the that's what I mean is that's a value of being present and being there and making time for these kind of things. And then in terms of family motto, I don't have one. It'd be cool if I had a Latin family motto that I could just say, but I don't. But the idea of it sounds really cliche, but that you can. How about you don't need to follow the traditional road, you know? Put that in Latin, and that's what it is for the crest. Because I think also, I got another one, is don't be afraid to ask questions. That's like my golden rule in life. And tying it back to podcasting, um, if I can be so bold as to say what I think makes my show work sometimes, is I have no shame in asking a stupid question when I don't know the answer. Partly because I know there'll be people listening who don't know. So if someone says something or refers to something or uses a big word or a district I don't know, I will so confidently and comfortably say, "Oh, I don't know what that means." Or what do you mean by that? And I'm doing it for the benefit of everyone, but often for myself. And when I flash back to like high school, I remember so clearly being in classes, like let's say some, I don't know, geometry class and the teacher talking about something. And I remember sitting there just being like, oh man, I got no idea what they're talking about. And then looking around and being like, I think everybody else probably gets it. I won't interrupt. I'll just look this up later when I'm at home and do the homework. Never look it up. Spiral out of control. And then if I had my brain now and go back, I would love to have sometimes just put my hand up and not only said, I don't know what you mean by that, but said, honestly, everyone in this class, how many of you actually know what this guy's talking about? And I bet a lot of the time, like 90% of them would have been like, I got no idea. And we're all too scared to say it. That's crazy. That's crazy. So that would be my motto. Don't be afraid. Ask questions. And plus whatever the other one was. Oh yeah, don't feel obliged to take the traditional road. They're my
Well, speaking of questions, I think Ollie's got one more question for you, and then if you'll indulge us, we're gonna head to our lightning round.
love it.
All right, so Ollie, fire away.
So you have a partner, your wife, and we both know, or we all know, in families that parenting. There's some people who are better at certain tasks and roles than others. So how do you and your wife divide up the parenting? Like who takes what? Who's good cop? Who's bad cop? I don't know. You know.
I think there's some things that one of us is just way better at. My wife is definitely better at cooking, and she just takes the lead on that way more than I do. And there's things that like let's say boring like admin. I'm just way better at it or more patient at it than her, and I just do the bulk of it. And so I think we just lean to our strengths, and we can both do what the other person does more of. Um, but we don't have any like, oh, I did all the early mornings this week. You got to do more of this, or you do all the early mornings next week. It's just we stick to what we can do, I think. And then bad kid, I don't know. I don't. We've experimented with lots of different strategies for lots of different things. I don't think there is a good or bad cop. I think Swedish parents are typically more. They call them helicopter parents in the States. Is that what they call it? Soccer mom, sort of. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
In Sweden
Yeah.
they call it curling parents, which is curling is the ice sport where you know it's like darts a little bit, and they clean the ground in front of it, which is kind of what you're doing for your kid, you know. Um, Swedes have a sort of predisposition to that. But I don't think either of us are good cop, bad cop. But something that we've experimented with lately that seems to work is when one is getting sort of tired of something, misbehaving, or someone not going to bed or something, is this idea of just tapping out. You guys do this? Just being like, and that change in energy can be miraculous. So we like instead of just noticing the point where something's getting too much and just being like, not even making a deal about it, just like, hey, let's switch here. And that, like, experimenting with those kind of things makes a difference rather than switching between good cop and bad cop. Although I bet that's to come as the as these kids get older.
I think that's the split is like there's good cop, bad cop, and then there's tag teaming. But tag teaming is
Yeah,
also about, really, there's the opponent in the wrestling scenario here, but it's really about the team being connected. And I'll be blunt, that's something I need to like kind of work on because sometimes when I tag, it's like too late. My wrestling partner's been jumped, they've been hit with the
yeah,
steel chair. We've lost the
yeah,
belt. Like it's really bad.
yeah.
It's really
Yeah, well,
bad.
that's part of it is knowing when to tag out your teammate rather than just tapping out yourself or tagging out. Yeah, tagging out, not tapping out. But yeah, it's interesting, and it's not we just sort of learned it by accident. Everything that you learn, it's very intuitive what we've been doing, everything, and often same with life. You find that there's those mottos I just made up on the spot. I bet there's beautiful sentences for exactly what I said. Same with everything, but same with the way that we learn Paris. You just do it, you just learn it, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the things that work are usually the best.
But it's interesting though because you were a journalist before you became like a living, breathing guide, and also you read a parenting book before you were a parent. So you're a guy who still does his homework, but you're not obliged by any hard rules. So mad respect
Tell you
there.
this,
Yeah.
I didn't do my homework in high school, never asked a question, so something must have changed. I must have learned something. But you know what? There's some people more intelligent than I am who, when they find out I was a journalist, this happened a couple times. They go, "That's why your podcast works, because you got journalist training." And I'm like, I don't know about that, but it sort of makes sense. Like that I must have interviewed loads of people before I ever did a podcast, and you got to, with journalism, you got to get right to the heart of the matter and the truth of the matter very quickly.
Mm.
Otherwise, you can't you've done it wrong. You know. So maybe there's a tie in there somewhere worth
Yeah.
exploring.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, we
lightning round.
no, we meander, but not in the lightning
No,
round.
no, thank
Uh,
God.
Ollie, I'm going to count you down. Here we go. Dad lightning round. Three, two, one.
All right, Oliver, welcome to the Dad Lightning Round. These are hard hitting, fast questions, and they require some pretty snappy answers. Number one, parenting advice in 5 words or less.
Uh, None of us know anything.
Love it. Number two, super speed or super strength.
What follow up? What for what?
Just for your own personal abilities. Would you rather be faster than a speeding train, or would you like
Speed.
the ability to move a
Speed.
mountain?
Speed.
Okay,
Always.
nice. Speed. Favorite book to read to your kids?
Should really say my own books. Should really say should really say Kylie the Crocodile.
Okay, that's your book, right?
Yeah, I should really say that.
Fa-
Otherwise, nah, Kylie the Crocodile.
Yeah, there it is. It's the crocodile book, folks.
Speed
Greatest,
round, speed round.
greatest dad in history.
It's got to be one of a TV show or something.
Okay, TV
Um,
dad. I like that. I like that
I think
direction.
everyone just says their own dad or something. No, I'm not gonna say that. There's got to be some TV dad who's awesome.
Okay, we'll watch some TV. Um,
No,
and
come back to it. Come back
we'll
to
come back to it. Best croissant in Paris is where?
it. There. Oh, there's. I don't know the name of it, but there's. No, I got one. Ghana. I think it's Gana. It's on Avenue Ledru Rollin, and hit the spot.
Do you get the
Absolutely hit the
regular?
spot.
Do you get ham and Swiss,
Just
chocolate?
regular. Honestly, I would go to any Parisian croissant. It's going to be better than any other croissant you've ever had. Side note, even though it's a lightning round,
Uh-huh.
I think it's in Chelsea,
Uh-huh.
in New
Uh-huh.
York, they've opened a Merveilleux de Fred, which is a Paris chain of patisserie shops. And I had a croissant there 2 months ago. That was one of the best I've ever had in my life.
Oh.
So you got them in New York. They don't even
Wow.
sell croissants in the one in Paris.
Wow. Okay.
Trust me. Trust me.
All right. I'm writing that one down. Favorite movie to watch with your kids?
We don't really watch movies, too young. But
Fair enough.
I'm gonna guess Indiana Jones for the future.
I will tell you from, I know we're doing the lightning round. We showed Heath Indiana Jones. It was projected on a large screen when he was maybe around your son's age. It was scarring. I would recommend starting with Frozen, but maybe your kid's tougher than mine. I don't know.
No, but I'm saying for the future. I'm saying for
Oh,
we
God.
haven't showed it to him
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, okay.
In 5 years.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
no, totally. Wait till he's 18. One book every dad should read besides your own.
Yeah, I couldn't say Kind of the Crocodile there either. Every dad should read that one I mentioned before,
Bebe.
Bringing Up Baby.
Bring it up, baby.
Yep.
Got it. Best part about raising kids in Paris.
That they grow up in the one the most beautiful place in the world, which does wonders for you, for your soul, I think, and two that they're well disciplined without it being crazy.
Your kids start a band. What's it called?
Yeah. Um, this is terrible. I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's funny. It popped into my head. I imagine they play string instruments,
Uh-huh.
and it will be the G strings.
I was like,
Came into my head.
your kids are too young. You may not have an answer, but you came up with nothing but gold right there. The snack you always wanted to steal from your kid.
Oh, easily. A pain au chocolat.
Ooh.
My 4-year-old loves the pain au chocolat, which is like a chocolate croissant.
Mm.
And I don't just want to steal, I often do.
Okay, actual thievery happening. One thing your kids have taught you.
Humility. He corrects my French and Swedish, which I thought I spoke pretty well.
Wow.
And it's humbling to know that a 4-year-old can speak a foreign language better than you.
Man, your kid. He might be ready for Indiana Jones in like 2 years. He seems like he's progressing quite well. You have 30 solo minutes alone, all to yourself. What are you going to do?
Um, probably try and write my new book.
Well, always working.
Yep.
Always working.
hmm
Best part about being a dad.
Uh, having having these totally innocent little souls that run up and just love you with everything they've got because they don't know any better yet.
Yeah. You know what? One of the cool things about this podcast, how we started it, was Neil's kids are at younger ages than my son. And you get to kind of reminisce, and maybe he can like look ahead a little bit. But I certainly want to say the magic of this is kind of just understanding the many beautiful chapters we have in this book that, our families are writing. And it has been a pleasure, a real pleasure to read some of your chapters, Oliver. Congrats on the pod. I can't wait to take a tour with you in Paris. Honestly, as much as, you know what, I'm not worried about making a food list. I'm more worried about booking a tour with you. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, man.
I
Oliver
appreciate it a
Z,
lot.
you are the world's greatest dad.
I appreciate it. And in case my own dad's listening, I'll say that he's the best dad in the world, and I will add the caveat that I was looking for a famous one that we could all relate to, and that's why I stumbled.
Oliver G's dad, you are the world's greatest dad.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks, guys.